Mark Thompson sat alone in the hospital room, his heart heavy with grief. His wife Sarah had just died during childbirth, but her belly was still moving. The doctors warned him of the risks, but Mark knew he had to give his daughter a chance at life. Little did he know that her birth would set in motion a chain of events that would change their lives forever. The news of their first child brought immense joy to Mark and Sarah Thompson. They had met in college, fallen in love, and eventually gotten married. Mark had proposed to Sarah on a beach, with the sun setting on the horizon and a gentle breeze blowing through her hair. It had been a perfect moment, and Sarah had said yes without hesitation. They had planned their wedding meticulously and finally tied the knot in a grand ceremony attended by their friends and family. After a few years of enjoying married life, they decided it was time to start a family. It took them a while, but eventually Sarah got pregnant. They had been ecstatic, and Mark had taken on the role of the doting husband, taking care of Sarah's every need. They had picked out names, painted the nursery, and made plans for the future. However, their happiness was short-lived. During labor, Sarah had complications and her heart stopped beating. Mark had been in the room and had watched in horror as the doctors tried to revive her, but it was too late. She was gone. As Mark sat alone in the hospital room trying to come to terms with his wife's death, he noticed that her belly was still moving. The doctors explained that the baby was still alive in the womb, but they were hesitant to perform a C-section on a dead body. They warned Mark that there could be complications and that the baby might not survive. "I don't care," Mark said firmly. "I want my baby to have a chance." The doctors reluctantly agreed, and soon after, they delivered a healthy baby girl. Mark was overjoyed to see his daughter and knew that Sarah would have been too. As the days passed, Mark took care of his newborn daughter and tried to adjust to life as a single father. He found solace in his daughter's laughter and smiles, and felt that a part of Sarah was still with him through their child. However, he soon discovered something that shook him to his core. During a routine checkup with the baby's pediatrician, they discovered that the child had an unusual genetic makeup. The doctors investigated further and learned that Sarah had undergone a secret experimental procedure while she was pregnant. Mark was stunned. He had no idea what the procedure was or why Sarah would have agreed to it. He started to dig deeper and found out that Sarah had been approached by a shadowy organization that claimed to be working on groundbreaking medical research. They had promised her that the procedure would help prevent genetic diseases in future generations. Mark was horrified that Sarah had kept this secret from him and wondered what other secrets she might have had. He started to investigate the organization and uncovered a web of lies and deceit. The organization was involved in illegal genetic experiments and had been targeting pregnant women as their test subjects. Mark was determined to expose the truth and bring justice to the victims. He sought the help of a journalist, a lawyer, and a group of activists. Together, they worked tirelessly to gather evidence, conduct interviews, and build a case against the organization. Mark spent the next few weeks and days trying to come to terms with the shocking revelation about Sarah's secret experiment. He couldn't believe that the woman he loved and married had kept such a huge secret from him. He was angry and hurt, but he also felt a sense of guilt for not noticing that something was amiss during Sarah's pregnancy. He spent long hours poring over Sarah's journals and medical records, trying to understand what had happened. He discovered that Sarah had been approached by a woman named Dr. Madison, who had promised her that the experimental procedure would ensure that their child would be born healthy and free of genetic diseases. But as he dug deeper, he realized that Dr. Madison was not who she claimed to be. She was a member of the shadowy organization that had targeted pregnant women for their illegal genetic experiments. Mark was determined to expose Dr. Madison and the organization, but he knew he couldn't do it alone. He reached out to the journalist, lawyer, and activists who had helped him before, and together, they embarked on a new mission to uncover the truth. They conducted interviews with former members of the organization and gathered evidence of their illegal activities. As they worked tirelessly to build their case, Mark's daughter grew up before his eyes. She was a bright and curious child with a passion for science and a love for adventure. She was also aware of her unusual genetic makeup and had many questions about it. Mark struggled to find the right words to explain the truth to her, but he knew he couldn't keep the secret from her forever. He finally decided to tell her the truth when she turned 18, hoping that she would be mature enough to handle it. On her 18th birthday, Mark took his daughter out to a special dinner and told her everything. He explained Sarah's secret experiment, Dr. Madison's deception, and the illegal activities of the organization. His daughter listened intently, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. After a few moments of silence, she looked up at her father and asked, "What can we do to stop them?" Mark felt a surge of pride and love for his daughter. He knew that she had inherited Sarah's strength and determination. Together, they vowed to expose the truth and bring the organization to justice. As time passed, Mark and his daughter became increasingly involved in the fight against the organization. They spent long hours working with the journalist and lawyer, poring over documents and strategizing their next moves. They also connected with other victims of the organization, offering them support and guidance. Mark's daughter had always been interested in science, and now she was determined to use her knowledge to help bring the organization to justice. She enrolled in a prestigious university to study genetics and began conducting her own research on the organization's illegal experiments. With her newfound expertise, she was able to identify a key weakness in the organization's operation. They were using a specific gene editing tool that had a high failure rate, leading to a number of dangerous side effects in the test subjects. Mark's daughter proposed a plan to use this weakness to their advantage by exposing the flaws in the gene editing tool and proving the dangerous consequences of the organization's experiments. They worked tirelessly to collect data and build their case, working in secret and taking every precaution to protect themselves and their investigation. They knew that the organization was powerful and dangerous, and they could not afford to make any mistakes. Finally, after months of gathering evidence, they were ready to take action. They presented their findings to the journalist, who agreed to publish the story in a major newspaper. The lawyer prepared to file a lawsuit against the organization, and the activists began planning a series of protests and demonstrations. On the day that the story was published, Mark and his daughter watched anxiously as the news spread across the country. They knew that their lives were about to change forever. The response was immediate and overwhelming. People were shocked and outraged by the organization's illegal experiments, and they demanded action. The lawsuit received widespread media attention, and the activists' protests drew national attention. Mark and his daughter were at the forefront of the movement, appearing on talk shows and giving interviews to major news outlets. They used their platform to raise awareness of the dangers of genetic experimentation and to call for stronger regulations and oversight. The organization fought back fiercely, denying all allegations and launching a campaign to discredit their accusers. But Mark and his daughter refused to back down, determined to see justice served. Finally, after months of legal battles and public scrutiny, the organization was forced to admit its wrongdoing and pay a hefty settlement to its victims. The leader of the organization was arrested and sentenced to prison, and the illegal gene editing tool was banned from use. Mark and his daughter were hailed as heroes, and their story inspired a national conversation about the ethics of genetic experimentation. They continued to work together, using their experience and knowledge to advocate for better regulations and to support other victims of genetic abuse. Mark and his daughter became well-known advocates for the rights of genetic research subjects. They gave speeches at conferences, appeared on television shows, and wrote articles in prestigious scientific journals. They used their platform to raise awareness of the dangers of genetic experimentation and the need for stronger regulations to protect individuals from genetic abuse. Over time, their work paid off. Governments around the world began to enact stricter laws to prevent genetic experimentation without informed consent. The scientific community also responded, developing new protocols and guidelines to ensure that research is conducted ethically and with the utmost respect for human rights. As they looked back on their journey, Mark and his daughter were grateful for the love and support that had carried them through the darkest moments. They knew that they had been through a lot, and they were proud of what they had accomplished. They understood that they would always carry the scars of their experience, but they also knew that they had the strength and resilience to overcome any challenge that came their way. They had learned to appreciate life's beauty and find meaning in the face of adversity. They continued to push for stronger regulations and greater transparency in the genetic research community. They believed that everyone had a right to know what was being done with their genetic material and to have a say in how it was used. Their tireless work inspired a new generation of scientists and activists who continued to build on their legacy. Mark and his daughter may have started their journey as victims, but they ended it as heroes, leaving behind a better world for future generations. They had turned a tragedy into an opportunity for change, and they had made a difference in the world.